into their work. There will be something about your work that is unique, that makes it stand out. And the more you talk about those things, and not just about the difference itself, but the reason behind it, the inspiration behind it, the story behind it, that will really help set yourself apart and generate more interest in what you do. So along with style is approach. Now, approach and style kind of go hand in hand. They are the way you work, the way that you create, and that all ties in really closely together. But going back to my photography example, I was talking about how so many photographers will claim that they take this really relaxed approach, and that it's really important that their clients feel comfortable. And I know, like I said before, that is very important to me, because most of the women I work with, I say women because 99% of the time it is women, will say that they've had bad experiences with photographers in the past, or they don't really like being in front of the camera, they feel a little bit awkward. So that is an important point to note with me, but it has to go above and beyond that, because I'm not the only one with that USP. So for me, I break it down a little bit further than that. I talk about the way that we work together. I talk about the meetings that we have beforehand to get to know each other, for me to get to know your business. These are things that not every photographer offers. There are a lot of photographers who will maybe share some emails back and forth and then just rock up on the day with their camera. And that's a very different experience than someone who's going to, spend an hour or 2 hours in a session beforehand getting to know you and your business. Neither is right or wrong, but my approach is unique to a lot of other brand photographers. So I'll give you another example here that's not just photography related. I have a friend who is a baker, and she certainly has her own unique style as well, but her approach is very seasonal. She buys locally as much as possible, buying local produce, using local eggs and milk and things like that, and she changes up her offerings often based on what is in season. So for her, her approach is to utilize as much as she can around her. It's to be creative. It's to work with the season. She goes with a very, I don't know if natural style of baking is the right way to do it, but she is less about sort of bedazzling her cakes and things, and more about using really good, genuine, local ingredients, and making the most of what she has around her. And that is quite unique to a lot of other bakers and what they offer as well. So the more she speaks about those things and why that's important to her and why she's passionate about that kind of baking, the more she sets herself apart from the others who are doing things differently. You may find thinking about your style and approach in one kind of category works well for you. I know for me it does, because the style of photos that I like to take are go hand in hand with the approach that I take. So I talk about those things hand in hand quite a lot. You can either do them separately or think about them together when you're doing a bit of brainstorming, but those are definitely two aspects that can really help set you apart from the competition. Okay, and the fourth and final category I'm going to talk about is your experience. So, chances are the other, I don't like to call people competitors, because I do think there is a client base for everyone. There's lots of room for everyone, and I believe firmly in community over competition and collaboration over competition. But it is true that you will have competitors. There are other people who are also selling their products and services to your ideal clients, and that's not a bad thing, but it is important to find a way to set ourselves apart. So when it comes to experience, it's not just saying, I have a degree in this or I did training in this, but it's talking about how your experience provides a different experience for your clients. So that could be something to do with your education and training. It could be something to do with an area that you specialize in, that you've spent a lot of time working in, or that you've done special training in, or it could have something to do with the types of clients that you've worked with in the past. Your experience could also relate back to your own business. For example, I moved to Scotland from Canada back in 2015. I have had that unique experience of having to build a business in a new country with no contacts and no network and no reputation. So a lot of times I will get inquiries from clients who are considering a move like that, or who have done the move and are a little bit unsure of how to get started. And what sets me apart from the others around me who are also offering brand strategy or content strategy sessions is that I have that experience of moving from overseas. Whereas, somebody else who's a brand strategist and has never left their hometown will have a very different experience because they will have always had a little bit of a network. People always have known who they are. So if you find the things about your specific experience that will set you apart from those around you, that can really help you find the right kind of clients. Similarly to that, there is a fabulous business I follow. She's actually been on the podcast, Rebecca at Temple de Luna. She has a skincare line, and she talks a lot in her content about her struggle with her skin. She had really bad acne as she was growing up, and she's very honest about it. She still struggles with it sometimes, and she's great at showing photos of real skin, not airbrush skin, not made up skin. She uses herself and her own photos on her own face quite a lot in her work. And Rebecca's page is full of insights on this of, she tells her story, she talks about her struggles, she talks about all the things she tried, and she talks about how much that inspired her to create a skincare line. And that really sets her apart from other skincare products or skincare companies that I look at, because as someone who also struggled with their skin and quite bad cystic acne throughout, not even just my teenage years, but well into my 20s, when I look at her products and when I learn about the inspiration behind them, they stand out for me because I know the person who created these had the same experience as I did. So the more that you bring yourself and your own personal experience into what you do, the more that you'll find the right kind of people. And in that way, I suppose this ties back into the personality thing. Yes, you might turn some people off with this, but you will bring more of the right people in. And the way that I look at that is, if somebody wasn't the right kind of client and they are turned off by what you say, they weren't the right client anyway, so you're not really any further back. But the more open and honest you are, the more you will connect with the right kind of people and bring in more work because of it. So that is my top 4 kind of areas to think about when you're trying to find your USP. We started with personality, moved on to style and approach, and then on to experience. I'm going to leave a little note here about brand values because we've sort of touched on that when we were talking there about Rebecca's business. Brand values are another really important way that can set you apart. I know I said 4 categories when we started, but I'd be remiss if I don't talk just for a minute about brand values. Next week's episode is actually going to be about brand values, so I don't want to delve too much into it now, but these are things that can really set you apart. So if something is really important to you, whether it's being a zero waste business, an inclusive business, there's a million wonderful values out there. If you think about the things that are really important to you and really mean something to you, make sure that those come forward when you're thinking about your USP, because that really will set you apart. For example, if you are someone who is very environmental and cares a lot about the environment, you're much more likely to buy from a business who is trying to adopt a zero waste policy than one who doesn't mention it. So think about what's important to you and always be honest with these. I think that's a key thing to point out here. Don't say something just because it's trendy or just because you think is what people want to hear. It's really important to be genuine. Think about what's genuinely important to you in your business and the kinds of things that are important to your ideal clients. And when you find the things that overlap there, that can be a great thing to bring out through your content as well. So that's all I will say about brand values, but definitely a fifth bonus thing to consider when you are thinking about your USP. Okay, I've definitely gone over my 20-minute marker here, but I did want to say a few things about getting your message across to your audience. So the obvious way to talk about your USPs, because I think most of us probably have more than one, would be to just say them out loud. When you are writing content, you could talk about them quite specifically. You could actually come out and say, my unique selling points, the things that make you unique, why I'm different from my competitors. But there's more subtle ways to do it as well. So we can obviously do this with the photos and videos we create. When you're thinking about the visual content you're creating, think about ways that you can inject your own unique personality and style and approach and experience, and your brand values to some extent as well in the visual content you're creating. And that will help your message get out there without you constantly having to say it. Because, much like sales, you would not want every post that you make to be a salesy post, because people don't like to feel like they're being sold at all the time. And likewise, you don't want to make every post saying, this is why I'm different, this is why I'm different, this is why I'm different. But you can do it more subtly. And in talking about yourself, about your experience, about your story, of sharing those silly little personality quirks. Marty at Weebit Social is brilliant at this. She always, if you ever chat with her about this stuff, I guarantee she will bring up this one example for you, about how she did a post about teacups and coffee cups, and how she has a mug collection and she has to use certain mugs at certain times of day. Like her first coffee of the day has to be in this mug. And it's funny because she says it's the highest performing post she ever did. She got the most engagement, the most likes on, and it was just something funny about a personality quirk. And she's absolutely right. That is the content that does the best when you're just open and honest and I guess vulnerable in a way, when you're kind of doing something that, that's a bit silly, or, that's not the most professional thing to say, but that's real, and people like real. They like authenticity. They like seeing somebody be genuine. So that's a great way to sort of share what makes you different without having to come out and say it bluntly. Just talk about your experience and your life and the things that you care about. And if you are being genuine in the way that you write, in the types of photos that you share, people will get a real sense of your personality, your style, your approach, and what kind of life experience you have. And it's a much more organic way than just simply stating the facts. The other thing that I will mention here is you can do a little bit of comparing. So no, you probably don't want to drag anybody under a bus, but you can compare yourself to your competitors in a sort of fun and lighthearted way without it being a me against them type mentality. But you can say, for me, for example, I might say do you shudder at the thought of, the cheesy, awkward grin of the studio photography session? Because we've all been in those sessions, whether it's, as a kid for school photos, or office headshots, or, even some wedding photos, and everybody has to stand with their shoulders straight and turn your head 90 degrees to this angle and smile, look at the camera, that whole thing. And for a lot of us, that's a super cringy experience that we really didn't enjoy. So I might draw into that and remind people of what that experience was like, see if they can relate to that, and then talk about how it could be different. So you don't need to throw anybody under a bus. You don't need to, bash anybody, because obviously everybody's style and approach are different. Everybody's personality is different, and that's great because there's a need for everybody out there. No one photographer is going to satisfy every client's needs, for example. But using that sort of showing the difference between what you do and what others do, or what the traditional experience is like, or what a traditional product is like, can be a great way of making yourself stand out, again, without just bluntly stating the facts. Okay, so now that this episode is about half an hour, I really better stop talking. So those are my thoughts on finding your USP and communicating it with your audience. I hope that was helpful. I hope that you can go back through that and make a little exercise out of it, maybe jot down 1 or 2 points in each of those categories and think a little bit about creative ways that you could communicate that with your audience. If you would like some feedback on your ideas, please feel free to DM me, send me a message. You can either get me at smallfishbigpod, which is my Instagram account for this podcast, or if you want to hop over to my brand page, it is Small Fish Brand Co. On Instagram as well. I am on Facebook, but I'm much more active on Instagram, and I would be happy to chat ideas with you. I'm always up for a quick brainstorm over chat. And if you would like a little bit more help with finding your USP, I am always available for one-to-one power hours, which are being done over Zoom right now while we are in lockdown. And I also offer more in-depth brand strategy and content strategy sessions where we can come up with a detailed plan if you feel like you need another head to get in on this. Two heads are always better than one. So that's where you can find me. Thanks so much for tuning into the first mini episode of the Small Fish Big Pod. I hope you will tune in for the next one, which will be all about brand values, how to determine yours, how to share them with your audience,